Disappearing football clubs, evil owners, and some of the biggest transfer mistakes of all time. Being a successful Premier League club does not come without its setbacks, and for any football club, the road to trophies and successful league campaigns is never without its obstacles. Today, we look at the most devastating mistakes from every Premier League club in the entire league's history, starting with Arsenal. In 2003, the then manager of Arsenal, Arsene Wenger, met with a young football prospect along with his mother. Wenger considered him a serious transfer prospect. He'd even visited Arsenal's training centre twice for medical evaluation. However, issues became apparent when trying to finalise the deal. Arsenal's finances did not allow for the £12 million asking price, and more importantly, Manchester United moved quickly to swoop in on the teenage winger for themselves. It was Man United's speed and winning formula that pushed the young player to decide to join Man United eventually, just passing up Arsenal. And so, on the 11th of August 2003, a young Cristiano Ronaldo joined Manchester United for £12 million, right before the start of the 03-04 Premier League season. Wenger would later refer to this incident as the biggest regret of his career, and you can understand why. Over his 5 years in the Premier League, Ronaldo would score 84 goals for the club and play a crucial role in Man United's winning of multiple Premier Leagues and a Champions League. And to think that in another universe, Ronaldo would play some of his best years for Arsenal and not Man United makes this one of the biggest what-ifs in football history. Wenger was actually quoted by saying, "We had an agreement basically. He had the shirt of Arsenal. I had lunch with him and his mother at the training ground, and had Arsenal moved more quickly to sign the young Ronaldo, things may have been very different for English football." In his interview with Piers Morgan, Ronaldo himself revealed that he was very close and one step away from signing. Definitely a tough pill to swallow for Arsenal fans. However, Arsenal's failure to sign Ronaldo was nowhere near as embarrassing as Aston Villa's worst moment in the Premier League. Aston Villa had a record season in the 15-16 season for all the wrong reasons. Winning just 3 games and losing 27 games, Aston Villa achieved the title of being the 4th worst Premier League side in history with just 17 points. However, one position which took a large amount of the blame was the manager's. Aston Villa started the 15-16 season with manager Tim Sherwood, who had won just one match in Aston Villa's first 11 games of the season. But it was only when Tim Sherwood was fired that Aston Villa made one of their biggest mistakes in their history, as they replaced manager Tim Sherwood with French manager Rémi Garde. He joined the club in November 2015 and was sacked by the club only 4 months later. His playstyle and his squad seemed to be polar opposites of each other as they could not combine. Because of this, Aston Villa would go on one of the worst runs in Premier League history, only winning 3 games in 20 matches. This meant that by the time he was sacked in March of 2016, the damage had already been done, and it was only a matter of time before Aston Villa were relegated. Being a newly promoted side, Bournemouth Football Club's time in the Premier League has not been exactly smooth sailing, and one Bournemouth season stands out compared to the others for all the wrong reasons. In the summer of 2019, Bournemouth had just sold Ryan Fraser, Tyrone Mings and Callum Wilson, some of their key players. Suffering this kind of loss to the squad required serious replacement. However, manager Eddie Howe did not see this situation as a serious one, and instead ordered the signing of average Premier League players with no real star qualities. It was clear from the first few games of the season that Bournemouth were not as exciting going forward or stable at the back. This form was continued throughout the 1920 season, which then saw Bournemouth finish 18 and get relegated. Definitely a mistake from the perspective of Eddie Howe. However, whilst Bournemouth suffered from selling their key players, Brentford suffered by not even producing them. In 2016, Matthew Benham, the owner of Brentford, made a very controversial decision regarding Brentford's youth academy, removing the academy entirely. However, he did offer a solution and developed what they called a B team. It meant that they would not produce any new players, but would accept players that had been previously rejected from bigger clubs or have come from lesser known leagues. This led to a lot of controversy, especially with the fans. The supporters believe that an academy is a key part of a club and that producing homegrown talent is crucial to a club's identity, and now there was no academy. And because of this, the names that Brentford's B team have produced have not been that impressive, and that the B team just feels a bit cheap. And while some people believe over time it will have been a good decision, it definitely was a controversial one. Brentford's biggest mistake could be thought of as minor. However, Brighton's biggest mistake had one of the biggest consequences in this list. Brighton's owner in 1995 decided the best way of removing the club's built up debt was to sell their current stadium. This proved to be very unpopular because from the moment the sale was announced to Brighton's final game at Goldstone Ground, during April 1997, fans protested outside their stadium furiously, and they absolutely had reason to. The reason that makes Brighton's stadium move so devastating was not only because they lost a key bit of history from their club, but between 1997 and 2011, when they moved to their current stadium, the club was essentially homeless. Brighton's owners did not plan the stadium move well, and this meant that from 1997 to 1999, Brighton were forced to share a stadium with Gilligan's Priestfield Stadium, which was over 70 miles away from Brighton, making travel to the games for players and fans extremely difficult. And from 1999 to 2011, Brighton were forced to use a measly 9,000 seat temporary stadium called the Withdean. This stadium was majorly too small, being an active athletic stadium, along with the facilities being downright terrible. It was fair to say that the time spent transferring between the stadiums for the club was miserable. Now we have Chelsea, and my God, we have a lot to talk about. Firstly, the transfer market has not exactly been kind to Chelsea over the years, not just because of the players they have overpaid for, but the players they really should not have let go. And this is the first talking point. Firstly, if a club got rid of a young prospect for just 15 million, for that same player to become one of, if not the best player in the world at the moment, we would all say that that club made a big mistake by selling him. Well, this exact scenario happened when Chelsea sold a young Mohamed Salah to Roma in 2016, due mainly to him not being first team quality. What a big mistake that was. Similarly, at the same time as having Salah in their club, Chelsea also had a young Belgian midfielder who was also decent according to Chelsea. However, he was sold to Wolfsburg in 2014 for 22 million. This same player would turn into treble-winning midfielder and Manchester City captain Kevin De Bruyne. But this was not the only transfer mistake that Chelsea have made. In fact, the more devastating decision came in mid-2011. It started in the 2009-2010 season, however, and the first season managing Chelsea for Italian manager Carlo Ancelotti. Ancelotti was well known at the time, having managed at both AC Milan and Juventus, but there was doubts whether he was going to be as good as people thought he was. But he would end up crushing these doubts, with players like Ashley Cole, Petr Cech, Didier Drogba, John Terry and Frank Lampard. He breezed his way to the top of the Premier League, getting Chelsea their third Premier League title. An amazing first season, and he would somewhat carry on this form onto the next season, finishing second in the Premier League and reaching the quarter-finals of the Champions League. To almost any other team, these results would have been praised, but not Chelsea. They would instead controversially sack Ancelotti after just 2 full seasons in the Premier League, finishing first and second during his time in charge. Chelsea did think they made the right decision at the time. However, once Ancelotti was removed and replaced by Andre Villas-Boas, Chelsea's form in the Premier League went very downhill, and they struggled to find their footing for several years due to his absence. And because of this, the sacking for Ancelotti will go down in history for all the wrong reasons.